So, because the GDP of Greenland is like $3.3 billion, but people are valuing Greenland of between $50 billion and almost $1 trillion. So what are you willing to pay for Greenland?
Well, I'm not going to have to pay anything. We're going to have total access to Greenland. We're going to have all military access that we want. We're going to be able to put what we need on Greenland because we want it. We're talking about national security and international security. So we're going to not have to pay anything other than the fact that we are building the Golden Dome, and the Golden Dome is going to be something that's going to be very amazing. It'll be Israel times probably 100. And we need it. I think we need it. And it's all going to be made in the United States.
President Donald Trump says negotiations are underway to give the United States unrestricted military and strategic access to Greenland without any time limit, and at what he says would be no cost to Washington. Trump made the comments during an interview with Fox Business host Maria Bartiromo, arguing that Greenland's geographic position makes it indispensable to U.S. national security. He said, and I quote, "Everything comes over Greenland. If the bad guys start shooting, it comes over Greenland. It's pretty invaluable." Trump said the U.S. is not seeking to buy Greenland outright, but instead wants permanent access to deploy military assets, including parts of what he described as a new missile defense system, dubbed the Golden Dome. He said, and I quote, "We're talking about it's really being negotiated now, the details of it, but essentially it's total access. There's no end, there's no time limit." Trump also claimed the agreement would allow Washington to place whatever military infrastructure it wants on the island, without paying Greenland or Denmark for it. The president said the deal is being negotiated within a NATO framework, following talks with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, talks that also led Trump to suspend previously threatened tariffs on European countries. In a social media post, Trump said the U.S. and NATO had agreed on a framework of a future deal covering Greenland and the wider Arctic region, aimed at preventing Russia and China from gaining a foothold there. Rutte confirmed that while U.S. acquisition of Greenland was not discussed, the focus was on Arctic security, rising Russian and Chinese activity, and strengthening NATO's presence in the region. He insisted the United States remains fully committed to the alliance.
Secretary General, thank you so much for joining us here on the program. What happened? How did you manage to convince President Trump to U-turn on...
Well, again, this issue did not come up anymore last night, and I think what we discussed is the goal. What do we want to achieve? And his vision, when he was Trump 45, again with Trump 47, clearly leading the way. He is the leader of the free world. If he is worried about something, hey, we'd better listen, because then he might have found something which is not good. And that is this issue of the Russians and the Chinese getting more and more access, because the sea lanes are opening up. We know there are 7 Arctic countries in NATO. That's the US, because of Alaska, that's Canada, and then 5 in Europe. And the 8th one is Russia. And we don't want the Russians to get access to our part of the Arctic. Plus, we have China, which is not an Arctic country, but which is more and more active there in that region. So it's a sort of informal 9th Arctic member. And he was always clear on this in my conversations with him. I think yesterday we focused on that aim, that goal. How can we prevent that from happening? And how can NATO collectively, under US leadership, as always, because the US is by far the biggest nation in NATO, how can we do this? I would say to my colleagues in NATO, let's focus on what we have to focus on. 2 things are crucial now. One is to implement the decisions at the summit in The Hague. The spending going up, equalizing with the US, getting the defense industrial base going. By the way, this is also an issue in the US, and the president is working hard on this, really ramping up defense production and getting to the CEOs of the big defense industrial companies to do that. And thirdly, of course, focusing on Ukraine. And let's not drop the ball when it comes to Ukraine, because we are so busy with all this other stuff. And on Ukraine, we need to make sure that they have what they need in terms of military support to sustain in the fight. Again, the US supplying large parts of that, paid for by European and Canadian allies. So that we have to keep focusing on.
Some people are describing you now as a Trump whisperer.
Nobody, Trump doesn't need whisperers. He needs...
But have you found a way and a strategy?
No,
Calling
I don't.
him daddy, you spoke
Why
to
would
him
I need to find a
yesterday.
way if he's doing the right stuff? When it comes to NATO, he's doing the right stuff. When it is coming to the Arctic, he is focusing us on the right issues. So why do I have to whisper to anybody? He doesn't need that. Sometimes you have your debates, of course, within the chamber, within the room, and with European allies I have those discussions. But in the end, this is the strength of NATO. We always pull together. Article 5 is ironclad. The US is totally committed to the organization. They had one big irritant, one big pebble in the shoe, Europeans not paying up. That we solved in the Hague. I don't think the Russians and Chinese will be happy because what we are doing this week is coming together as NATO allies under American leadership, President Trump's leadership, to focus on protecting the Arctic region. I don't think the Russians and Chinese are happy. When you look at...
But with the language Donald Trump was using against the Europeans, you don't think that they look at that and think a wedge is being created?
In NATO, you always will have your discussions. But that's the great thing about NATO. It is an alliance of democracy. So you will have your discussions. But the Russians and the Chinese know that we are one for all and all for one, that Article 5 is ironclad, an attack on one is an attack on all. There is no doubt.
But in Greenland, the reaction has been far less enthusiastic. Greenland's Prime Minister emphasized that any discussion about the island's future must respect international law and the right of self-determination.
Our goal and wish is to continue a peaceful dialogue based on cooperation, with respect for our constitutional position, international law, the right to our country, and the right to self-determination.
On the streets of Nuuk, residents expressed frustration and anxiety, saying Greenland is being treated as a strategic asset rather than a people with a voice. Others warned that NATO itself cannot make decisions about Greenland without Greenland and Denmark's consent.
Hvis du vil lave nogle aftaler om Grønland, så skal du invitere Grønland med i bordet. Grønland skal være med i bordet. Nothing without Greenland, nothing about Greenland without Greenland.
Jeg synes, vi skal, som minimum skal vores landsstyreformand have besked på, hvad det er, der bliver talt om hele tiden. Og han skal være med hele vejen, hvis ikke vores udenrigsminister. Ligesom når man CC'er en mail, så skal man også CC, vores øverste ledelse. Så det er det, jeg mener.
Men i Trumps hoved, der bliver det til, vi har aftalt. Det er ikke nogen aftale. Så det er, det er spændt. Jeg er spændt på at høre vores formand for landstyret i eftermiddag, hvad han har at fortælle. Dag efter at Trump har været præsident nu anden gang, der er det ikke til at vide, hvad der kommer i løbet af dagen eller i morgen. Og specielt når han er ude efter vores land, som om det var en isflage, som driver på havet, så er det meget ildevarslende. Man bliver utryg.
I'm very disappointed because Rutte cannot make any agreement with Trump without Denmark or Greenland. And Denmark cannot make any decision without Greenland either. So we are very disappointed.
So
we are very excited over what kind of agreement they have made. As Rutte says, NATO has a responsibility for the Arctic, so it's not for payment. We are not willing to give him anything. This is protection for everyone, not only for Greenland.
As Washington pushes for sweeping access to the Arctic under the banner of security, Greenland's leaders and citizens are making one demand clear: their future cannot be negotiated without them.